Finally, the time has come for Aglaea to be released in version 3.0. Well, who wouldn't be interested in a beautiful female character who wears a dress and is one of the main characters in the latest Honkai Star Rail story? Just like the Herta, Aglaea will grace our screens in version 3.0. This character has a lightning type with a remembrance path, which means this makes her the first limited characters to have a remembrance path. Apart from having a charming appearance, she also has a very interesting kit. Even in some beta test footage, she can deal huge damage with the help of some of her main supports, namely Sunday and RMC. Could Aglaea be the new meta DPS in Honkai Star Rail? Well, without further ado, I'm Hoyostation and we're about to discuss the Aglaea 3.0 Ultimate Guide. Let's do this. Do you have a character or weapon in the game that you really want but you don't have enough Stellar Jades? Here's a smarter way to recharge your favorite games like Genshin Impact and Honkai Star Rail. Look no further than Lootbar. Lootbar is the most reliable top-up platform. It saves up to 20% for all orders compared with the official channel, and it provides an 80% off for your first purchase. It's 100% safe as you will only be using your UID. We will buy pack for 3,000 Stellar Jades for $42, which otherwise would have costed $50. Totally saving $7.5. We received the crystals we purchased in the less than 3 minutes. All recharges will be done through the official channel with miHoyo, which allows you to enjoy all top-up offers. Ready to level up your gaming experience? Check the link in the description to get the amazing discount. Before we go deeper into her kit, there are some interesting things about her base stats that we should discuss. If we compare her to the character I discussed yesterday, the Herta, Aglaea looks superior in several areas, namely HP, attack, and also speed. But the most interesting thing about Aglaea's base stats is the amount of energy capacity she has. Yes, you didn't see it wrong, guys. In fact, her energy capacity is very high. She is the character who has the most energy at this time. But take it easy, just like the Herta, Aglaea has certain mechanics to be able to recharge energy for her ultimate. Also, there are some positive things that come from having a lot of energy, which we will discuss in this video. So instead of being curious, let's jump right into the kit. To make it easier to understand her kit, we will try to talk a little bit about her MEMOSPRITE first. For Aglaea's particular MEMOSPRITE, a headless, sword-wielding creature named Garment Maker. For the basic attack used by her MEMOSPRITE named Thorn Snare, which deals lightning damage equal to 110% of its attack to one enemy and lightning damage equal to 66% of its attack to enemies around it. Looks ordinary enough, however, there is something we must pay attention to in this kit. Instead of using skill points, this skill does not require any SB to use, and every time you use this skill, Aglaea will gain 10 energy. Now, since this is a basic attack that will be used by the Garment Maker every turn, this kit looks quite basic, but this is quite acceptable. Okay, now we will move on to the Garment Maker's talent section. For the first talent, called A Body Brewed by Tears, it has an amazingly interesting talent, guys. After the Garment Maker attacks an enemy who has a debuff called Sim Stage, which is a debuff that Aglaea will give to the enemy through her talent, the Garment Maker will get an additional speed of 55 points, and can be stacked up to 6 times. Then, every time the Garment Maker's turn arrives, it will automatically use Thorn Snare. Now you are probably wondering, why did I say this was one of the most extraordinary talents? The additional speed that can be obtained by Garment Maker on the maximum stack can reach 330 speed, guys. And that does not include the base speed it had at the beginning of the battle. This makes Garment Maker one of the fastest character in the game. Interesting, right? Then for the second talent, named the Speeding Summer, when the Garment Maker is called into battle, the Garment Maker will immediately get an action advance of 100%. Now that is quite interesting, meaning that as soon as they are called into battle, they can immediately attack the enemy and immediately generate energy for Aglaea. Quite interesting, right? Okay, now we will move on to the Garment Maker's third talent called Bloom of Dying Grass. When the Garment Maker disappears, it will provide 20 energy to Aglaea. Well, here it is not clearly mentioned about the cause of disappearance of the Garment Maker, so that both it lost the battle and also disappeared as a result of Aglaea's kit, which I will discuss later, then Aglaea will get an additional 20 energy. And finally we enter Aglaea's kit, and first we will discuss her skill called Rise, Exalted Renowned. With this skill, she can resource HP to her MEMOSPRITE named Garment Maker, amounting to 50% of the maximum total HP she has. When Aglaea uses this skill, if the Garment Maker is not on the field, Aglaea will summon the Garment Maker and that unit will immediately get a turn. Okay, one small thing I have to say here is, if we compare to other characters, the energy produced by the average skill will produce 3 energy. Now specifically for Aglaea, it seems that she produces less energy, which is 20 energy. In addition, there are other things to note here. When Aglaea restores HP through this skill, she will also remove any crowd control debuffs owned by the MEMOSPRITE. Honestly, this is a pretty interesting skill, and one that is much needed for characters that have mechanics like MEMOSPRITEs. Also, this skill does not force us to use it every turn, which means that Aglaea is a positive SP character that will continue to generate SP. So it's still quite suitable to be paired with the characters that waste SP, like Bronya, if you don't have Sunday. And next up is her ultimate. Aglaea's ultimate, Dance Destined Weaveress, has an effect that is quite unique, guys. For the first effect, when Aglaea uses this ultimate, she will summon her MEMOSPRITE named Garment Maker. However, if the Garment Maker is already on the field, Aglaea will recover her maximum HP. Then for the second effect, Aglaea will enter a special state called Supreme Stance, then get 1 turn back. Now while in this special state, Aglaea will receive a speed boost equal to the number of talent stacks owned by Garment Maker. Remember that Garment Maker has a talent called a Body Brewed by Tears that can increase Garment Maker's speed up to 330 speed. Yep, each stack of this talent increases Aglaea's speed by 15%. That means Aglaea will get a total of 90% extra speed at her maximum stack. Oh yeah, the extra speed from this effect only applies to speed that comes from the base stats. Even so, by relying only on the speed that comes from this effect, Aglaea will be able to easily touch 19 for speed. Cool, right? As for the next effect in this kit, it changes her basic attack into an enhanced basic attack called Slash by a 1000-fold Kiss. When this enhanced basic attack is active, we cannot activate skills, and Garment Makers will become immune to crowd control. In addition, a countdown will appear in the action sequence at 100 speed. Aside from that, there's one interesting thing about this ultimate effect. If you use this ultimate again when there's a countdown on the action bar, the countdown will be updated. This means that if you can use this ultimate continuously while the countdown is running, Aglaea's Supreme Stance status will never expire. This is certainly different from Firefly, as Firefly does not have the ability to reset countdowns. Then what happens when the countdown gets a turn? When the countdown reaches a turn, the Garment Maker will be destroyed and the Supreme Stance will immediately disappear. This is unfortunate, but when the Garment Maker is destroyed, the effect of Garment Maker's talent is active, and we get 20 energy. All in all, this is a pretty interesting ultimate effect. Okay, now we move on to Enhanced Basic Attack, which is Slash by a 1000-fold Kiss. In this Enhanced Basic Attack, Aglaea and Garment Maker will combine attacks on one target, then produce a combined attack called Joint Attack, consisting of 200% of Aglaea's attack and 200% of Garment Maker's attack. They will then both deal damage to surrounding targets equal to 90% of each other's attack. Okay, this is very interesting kit. There are a few things we should note about this kit. The first being that this basic attack kit cannot generate skill points. So, if you are in Supreme Stance mode for too long and use this basic attack, it will somehow make Aglaea a character with neutral SP. In addition, I will add more information about this enhanced basic attack here. This kit is a joint attack type kit, which means that this attack consists of 2 attacks, Aglaea's and Garment Maker's. Of course, this will cause some changes to some characters' kits. For example, if you are using the ultimate buff from Robin, then the extra damage from Robin provides is doubled in this attack. Also, this kit has an effect of Fei Xiao's stack calculation, where she will immediately get 1 full stack of Flying Aureas. Pretty interesting, right? Next, we move on to another interesting part, which is her talent called Rosy Fingered. In her talent, the MEMOSPRITE named Garment Maker will have a base speed equal to 35% of Aglaea's speed and an HP equal to 66% of Aglaea's maximum HP plus 720 points. In addition, when Garment Maker is on the field, Aglaea will deal a debuff called Sim Stitch when she attacks. This Sim Stitch doesn't actually do anything, but if the Garment Maker attacks an enemy who has this debuff, the Garment Maker will gain additional speed based on the talent we discussed at the beginning of the video. Yes, of course, with the increase in speed, Aglaea will also gain additional speed through a special condition called Supreme Stance. Not only that, if Aglaea attacks an enemy who has a Sim Stitch condition, it will produce additional damage worth 3% of Aglaea's attack. That's pretty good, right? Oh yeah, there's one note that I have to say about this kit. The calculation of the garment maker's base speed that comes from this kit is calculated when starting the battle. So, if during the battle Aglaea gets a buff that can increase speed, then it will not increase the garment maker's base speed. Okay, now that we have talked about this talent, it would feel less boring if we didn't talk about her technique called Meteoric Thunder. When using this technique, Aglaea will summon the garment maker into the overworld and attack the enemy together. Then, during the battle, Aglaea will gain 30 energy and deal lightning damage equal to 100% of Aglaea's attack to all enemies and randomly deal a debuff called Sim Stage. Well, actually this is a pretty good technique, because by using this technique, we don't have to summon the garment maker at the beginning of the battle, so we can save one skill point. In addition, with the effect of garment maker's talent, the garment maker will get early stun because it gets 100% action advance at the beginning of the battle. Nice, right? Okay, we've pretty much talked about Aglaea's kit, and we're going to get into her traces. The minor traces that Aglaea will receive in the upcoming release are a 22.4% damage boost for lightning, a 12% critical rate boost, and finally a 12.5% defense boost. At first glance, these traces are quite good for Aglaea, who is a DPS role. And with the addition of critical rate, it will certainly make it easier for us to find relics that match her kit. Well, it's unfortunate that there's no additional attack status to her minor traces, because as we know, Aglaea will often attack enemies. So I personally would prefer an attack increase rather than defense increase that these minor traces provide. Now it's time to discuss her traces. For the first trace, called the Myopic's Doom, when in a special state, Supreme Stance, it will increase the attack of both Aglaea and Garment Maker by 720% of Aglaea's speed and 360% of Garment Maker's speed. Now, frankly, this is a very interesting traces, because with these traces, it becomes clear that this unit is a character whose scaling is based on speed. So the more speed we have, the more attack we get. If we do a little math here, if we have at least Aglaea with 161 speed, then we get about 3200 attack from these traces. Isn't the addition of Aglaea's attack amazing? Then for the second traces, named Last Thread of Fate. When the Garment Maker disappears, then we will get one stack of speed boost which comes from the MEMOSPRITE talent. When the Garment Maker returns, the Garment Maker immediately gets a speed boost stacks back. Well, if I'm honest, this is a trace that's not too good, but it's okay to have. At least one speed boost will immediately obtained when the Garment Maker loses the fight or disappears due to the Supreme Stance ending. As for the last trace she has, named the Speeding Soul, it has a pretty fresh effect. When you enter the battle, if Aglaea's energy is below 50%, it will increase Aglaea's energy by 50%. The effect of these third traces is very interesting, guys, especially when used in endgame content such as Simulated Universe or Divergent Universe, because our energy will continue to be filled after the ultimate. Finally, we come to the discussion of her Eidolon. There are 4 interesting Eidolons that we need to discuss. For Aglaea's first Eidolon, Drift the Whim of Venice, has a very interesting effect. When the enemy gets a debuff called Sim Stage, the enemy gets a 15% damage increase. Then after Aglaea and Garment Maker attack the target, Aglaea will get an additional 20 energy. This honestly is one of the very good Eidolons. In fact, it's very worth getting because Aglaea and also Garment Maker get a lot of turns because the speed is very fast. Of course, the fact of adding energy is very easy to trigger. Plus, this additional energy can still be increased if we have high energy regeneration on our status. For example, by using main status energy regeneration on the rope. Of course, this becomes very worth it. On the other hand, Aglaea's joint attack called Slash by 1000-fold case will provide 40 energy with this Eidolon, because the attack is counted as 2 attacks. For the second Eidolon named Sail on the Raft of Eyelids, when Aglaea and Garment Maker issue an attack, the damage done through the attack will ignore 14% defense from the enemy. This effect can stack 3 times, and will end when a character other than Aglaea and Garment Maker casts an ability. Now, if I'm being honest, this is actually a pretty interesting Eidolon. If we add it up, we can ignore up to 42% of enemies' defense with this Eidolon, which is certainly a good effect for a DPS. Of course, we can easily do this if we use the ultimate at the right time to trigger this effect. But unfortunately, Aglaea and Garment Maker need to be on consecutive turns to maintain this buff. And of course, the biggest weakness of this Eidolon is that this maximum stack effect is quite difficult to trigger when using auto battle. As for Eidolon 4, Flicker Below the Surface has a very unusual effect. The effect on this Eidolon will increase the limit of the speed boost from the MEMOSPRITE talent to 7th. This means that with Eidolon 4, the maximum speed increase that Garment Maker can have is 385 speed, which is very high, right? And of course, with the MEMOSPRITE talent stack increase, Aglaea also gets a speed increase up to 105%, which is nice. In addition, when Aglaea attacks the enemy, the Garment Maker will also get a speed boost effect from its talent, which previously could only increase the stack of the MEMOSPRITE when the MEMOSPRITE itself attacked. Finally, the last Eidolon, called Fluctuate in the Tapestry of Fates, also has surprisingly good effect. Well, Eidolon 6 of course. When Aglaea enters the Supreme stance, both she and the Garment Maker will receive 20% lightning resistant penetration. In addition, if both Aglaea and the Garment Maker have speed above 160, 240, or 360, the damage they deal with each other increases by 10%, 30%, or 60%. This Eidolon is very good Eidolon because the increase in damage output is very significant with this Eidolon. Based on information I have received from various sources, Aglaea can get a significant increase in damage output from her Eidolon 1 and also Eidolon 6, with an increase of more than 50% over the previous damage output. And finally, we come to another important discussion, which is about her signature light cone called Time Movement into Gold. This light cone has an effect called Establishment, which increases the user's base speed by 12 speed, which means Aglaea will have a base speed of 114 points, which is very fast, guys. If we calculate the additional speed that we will get from the buff through the kit, then Aglaea will get 11 more speed than not using this light cone, for a total of 216 speed. Each stack of Brocade increases the critical damage by 9%, which can be stacked up to 6 times, meaning that the maximum increase is 54%, and when the stack of Brocade reaches its maximum, the damage caused by basic attacks increases by 9%. Honestly, according to me personally, this is one of the light cones that has a very interesting effect. It has an effect that can increase base speed and also the damage produced. If you intend to pick up Aglaea in version 3.0, this light cone is not to be missed. Next, we will discuss the recommended build for Aglaea. For relic recommendations, I recommend using a relic called Hero of Triumphant Song. This relic has a very fitting effect for Aglaea, as this relic can increase attack by 12%, speed by 6%, and when our MEMOSPRITE attacks, both the user and the MEMOSPRITE get a 3% increase in critical damage. Interesting, right? Actually, in addition to the Hero of Triumphant Song, you can also use Musketeer of Wild Wheat. This relic can be an optional relic if you don't currently have a Hero of Triumphant Song relic with good status. This relic can also increase attack by 12%, speed by 6%, and damage done by basic attacks will increase by 10%. Although not as good as Hero of Triumphant Song, this relic is pretty decent to use. Then in the ornament section, I will recommend an ornament called the Wondrous Banana Amusement Park, the effect of which can increase critical damage by 16%. And if there is a summon owned by the user in the field, it will get an additional 32% increase in critical damage, making the total increase in critical damage 48%. What about status recommendations used for Aglaea? The status recommendations you can use for Aglaea status are as follows. Okay, we discussed relics as a whole. What about the best light cones you can use? There are several light cone options you can use. Of course, the best option falls on the signature light cone named Time Movement into Gold. As I mentioned before, this relic has a lot of statuses that can increase Aglaea's damage output. And even with this light cone, Aglaea gets a lot of more speed because her base speed also increases. But besides this signature light cone, there are several optional light cones that you can use. For example, the light cone named Sweat Now Cry Less. This light cone can increase the user's critical rate by up to 20% on Superimpose 5, and the user's damage can increase by up to 36%. But unfortunately, to get this light cone, you can only get it through the Battle Pass, which means it's not for free-to-play players. However, there are several other options that can be used, such as Genesis Greetings or the 3-star light cone called Reminiscence. And finally, we come to the last discussion in this video, which is the best teammates that Aglaea can be paired with. The first character that would be a perfect match for Aglaea is Sunday. Sunday is a very fitting choice to be paired with Aglaea because Sunday has the ability to give the target an action advance and also spell it out. In addition, since Aglaea has a very large energy capacity, it's clear that Sunday's ultimate is also more effective. For a single use of ultimate, Sunday can provide 70 energy. Very big, isn't it? The second character Aglaea pairs well with is, of course, Huohuo. Just like Sunday, Huohuo provides a tremendous amount of extra energy from her ultimate. By providing 70 extra energy from her ultimate, Huohuo will certainly speed up Aglaea to be able to use the ultimate. In addition, the attack increase buff from her ultimate is also very good for increasing Aglaea's damage output. By pairing Huohuo and Sunday in the team, we have the ability to spam ultimate during Supreme Stance, which will continue to reset the duration when activated. The third character that works well with Aglaea is of course RMC. Because Aglaea has a large energy capacity, so Aglaea gets the maximum true damage effect, so that RMC's kit can be utilized optimally. Also, because Aglaea can move very fast, it makes Mem charge fill up faster. In essence, these two characters have a combination that is very good for pairing, especially if you don't have Sunday on your account. For the last character that I feel is very fitting to be paired with Aglaea, who else if not Robin? Robin has an ultimate set that Aglaea can really use. Since Aglaea and Garment Maker move very fast, the effect of Robin's ultimate is often triggered. In addition, Aglaea's joint attack can trigger twice the effect of Robin's ultimate. So Robin's kit can be used effectively. Although Aglaea is not a character that relies on follow-up attacks, the combination of these two characters can be used as an option if you don't have Sunday. Okay guys, I think that's all for now. What do you think about Aglaea? Please leave any comments down below. And don't forget to check out my another video because they are just as cool. Thanks for watching, stay safe, stay healthy, and see you in the next video.